And today, Sac Sheriff announced the beginning of their release for all of them. I think 31 cameras went out today. And I'm just interested in your thoughts because, you know, with what happened with Stephon and body cameras and, you know, your continual fight to, you know, make sure law enforcement is held accountable in all ways. I'm just interested on your initial feedback.
Well, before I get into my righteous criticism of Sheriff Scott Jones and the department, I want to say that slow progress indeed is better than no progress. And I want to say that. I also want to say that we would like to see all the policies regarding these body cameras. We would want to know how come just some of the division and not all of the divisions will have body cameras. And we would want to say that even though these officers will be having these body cameras, transparency without accountability means nothing. And we could see what you're doing, but if you're not held accountable, then it means nothing. And I believe that, you know, if this transparency could work when it comes to accountability, when it comes to these sheriff's body cameras, then maybe we can get more justice when it comes to the streets of Sacramento. And I'm just speaking for those who have been affected by the Sheriff's Police Department with no transparency. And I would like to take it a step further and say, what about those institutions of Sacramento County Jail and the RCCC department? You know, I'm hearing a lot of stories from the pandemic on what's going on in there. Those guys in there, those correctional officers, we need to see they need to have body cameras. We need to see body cameras in these jails and these institutions because they're trying to expand these into mental institutions. And jails are nowhere to treat the mentally ill.
That's such a good point. I love that. And I wanted to specifically talk to you, and I think you were kind of maybe hitting on this with the policy with, you know, your brother. One of the big things was they muted the cameras after. And so I was hoping you could talk about that because it's kind of like, yes, they have the cameras and that's awesome. But if you mute it and you don't know what they're talking about, it kind of defeats the whole purpose. So I was hoping you could talk about that.
Oh, yes. The transparency thing. Yes, you have these body cameras, but once we hear you say mute these body cameras, once we know that you can edit them and do whatever you want with it when it comes to manufacturing the footage that is being available to the public. You know, after my brother was assassinated in my grandmother's backyard, you would remember that shortly after the chief of police, Daniel Hahn, changed and implemented a policy saying that officers shall not mute their body cameras. It took the death of my brother in my grandmother's backyard to do that. When these body cameras are issued to these law enforcement officials, it needs to be in plain writing that you cannot mute it, that you cannot turn it off, that you cannot edit it. It needs to be in plain writing that you cannot manufacture it the way to serve your personal needs and your personal interest. And I got a lot of background in it.
No, you're fine.
Phone off and get that phone out of here, please.
Yeah, no, you're good. What do you hope to see, you know, obviously besides very clear policy, as you know, it is a good movement, like you mentioned, coming out and like slow progress. What do you hope to see from Sac Sheriff besides maybe policy in regards to these body cameras?
Oh, I would like to see a accountability commission for the Sheriff's Department between community like myself, law enforcement officials, and some elected officials as well. An accountability commission that could serve not just for the Sheriff's Department here doing the patrol, but those inside the facilities, Sacramento County Jail and RCCC. I would like to see some type of accountability. You know, I would like to see face masks getting distributed. I would like to see proper supervision. I would like to have our community be more active in ride-along programs with our Sheriff's Department. I would like to help bridge the gap and have a dialogue with our Sacramento Sheriff Scott Jones, a meeting, whether it be private or public, just to sit down and figure out how we can figure out what the hell is going on, you know, because transparency without accountability, like I said, means nothing. And I'm not going to beat him up the whole time. You know, slow progress is better than no progress. And we commend him for taking the right steps when it comes to implementing these body cameras in some of these divisions, but we want body cameras in not some of the divisions, but all of the divisions. Just like we don't want justice on some levels, but all levels. And everybody love everybody.
I love it. And last question for you. You know, you said slow progress is better than no progress, but so many law enforcement agencies have body cameras, and SAC Sheriff said today that they're one of the biggest law enforcement agencies in Northern California. What are your thoughts on them kind of coming out with body cameras now? Do you feel like, it's kind of late in the game?
They are really late in the game because they are disconnected with the community. Scott Jones, just because, you guys are the largest, one of the largest, and that doesn't mean anything. Hitler had millions of followers. Jesus only had 12. You being large, you being a group, you having, being the biggest, some would say gang, that doesn't mean anything. It's about everybody coming together, calling for transparency and accountability on all levels. Yes, Sheriff, you are late in the game, but a lot of law enforcement agencies aren't really connected when it comes to the communities that they're serving. And that's a problem that we as community and we as law enforcement need to sit down and figure out how we can bridge that gap. And I believe until we start having the dialogue, there will always be a lack of trust when it comes to Sheriff Scott Jones and his department in the community. And I'm speaking about the undeserved, underrepresented, underdeveloped, and underfunded communities. Until we have a proper dialogue and we figure out who's patrolling our communities, how they're patrolling our communities, what these body cameras look like, the policies in these body cameras, what divisions will have these body cameras, and what areas will these body cameras be distributed. It's so many questions I have, and I want to sit down and talk to Scott Jones about personally. And
yeah. I think that would be great for transparency, for sure. So great. That was all of my questions. Was there anything
And I would really want to say before we leave is that what we're doing here at IMSAC Foundation, I don't mean to just plug my thing real quick, but what we're doing at IMSAC Foundation is we're trying to bridge the gap. We're not trying to fight with the Sheriff's Department. We want to see how we can help, how we could be a part in bringing people together, not dividing people. And I think at IMSAC Foundation, we believe in bridging the gap between law enforcement at-risk communities to stop the brutality of our people, to stop the killing of our people, and levels, and get justice for our families and the people who win. So March 18th is going to be the grand opening of Stephon's house here at 5940 Rosebud Lane. And it's going to be at noon. And we want to invite you, the media, and everybody else to come out and commemorate the life and legacy of Positive Light. Because if you remember at his funeral, I said Stephon's kids should be taken care of, which is good. His mother, who is now the CEO, she's good. And his resource center, which we have now built, and is good. And once I open that resource center, it'll be a first of its kind in the entire nation. It'll be a first museum. It's a library with over 10,000 books. It's a rec center and a resource center. And it's called Stephon's House. Nothing like this has ever been done. And it's beginning here in Sacramento. And this is where I'm going to change the world with this. You have no idea, but I'm going to be quiet. And never tell your left hand what your right hand doing.